Joint statement on the supplementary voter registration incident in Nyangen village, Nyani constituency, Janjambure. First, who are those behind this statement? The two organizations behind this joint statement are Gambia Participates and Election Watch Committee. And a background information of these two organizations are as follows. Gambia Participate is a civil society organization focused on promoting fiscal transparency, anti-corruption, enhancing electoral processes and the rule of law to strengthen democracy in the Gambia. GB has been GB has been working on improving the electoral processes through citizen election observation, voter education, participation, and electoral reform. Gambia Participate is also involved in election observation within the sub-region of West Africa. The Electoral Work Committee is a non-partisan citizen observation platform created through a partnership of 7 organizations with expertise in governance, youth participation, and gender inclusion. The EWC includes peace ambassadors, the Gambia PAG, Activista, National Youth Parliament, NYP, Think Young Women, Bekanyang Peace Hub, and the Gambia Peace Hub the Gambia, and the Gambia Federation of the Disabled, GFD. Since November 2020, the EWC has monitored elections across the Gambia, providing recommendations for improving electoral integrity. Peace Ambassador Gambia serve as the secretariat of the EWC committee. Now, the background of why we are here. The Independent Electoral Commission, IEC of the Gambia, announced on March 3rd, 2026, that it will conduct a supplementary voter registration from April 8th to May 21st, 2026. By virtue of Section 13, Subsection 2 of the Elections Act 2025, any Gambian is qualified or entitled to have their name registered on the register of voters in their constituency by the IEC if he or she produces either of the following documents. 1. A birth certificate. 2. A Gambian passport. 3. A national identity card. Or an attestation from an alcalo or CFO satisfying that he or she is a Gambian. Therefore, it is mandatory for the IEC to register the name of any citizen who meets the nationality, age, and residency stipulated in Section 13, Subsection 1 of the Elections Act on the register of voters if he or she produces any of the above mentioned documents is eligible to be registered on the electoral register by the IEC. In rural communities such as Nyangen village, where access to formal identification remains limited, attestation by an alcalo serves as a lawful and essential mechanism for ensuring citizens without government-issued identification documents or birth certificates are not excluded from the electoral process. An attestation document satisfies that an individual is a Gambian and he or she is eligible to be registered as a voter. Alcalo satisfies these prescribed attestation forms using the official alcalo seal or the alcalo stamp. Now the facts. The government of the Gambia, in its press release dated April 9, 2026, announced that it has temporarily withdrawn and taken custody of the Nyangen village alcalo stamp following allegations of a misuse of the stamp, quote, in a manner inconsistent with its intended purpose, end quote. The government reported that the governor of Central River Region, Usman Ba, with his deputy governor, engaged the alcalo of Nyangen and other district CFOs in a meeting where the alcalo confirmed that he entrusted the stamp to his son. As a result of this, the alcalo seal was seized and, quote-unquote, placed in a secure custody. The government press release claims that the temporary seizure of the stamp was necessitated by the need to protect the integrity of the ongoing voter registration exercise in Nyangen village in the Nyani constituency, Central River Region. The government in its press release also stated that the village stamp of Nyangen was entrusted to the son of the alcalo by the alcalo himself. The statement of the government, however, did not go further to elaborate on the nature of the abuse of the stamp, other than asserting that, quote-unquote, official administrative instruments belonging to the community and the state. And they continue to quote that no individual, regardless of position, affiliation, may use them for purposes other than their lawful administrative functions, end quote. Although the government did not state the reason for withdrawing the stamp other than it was being abused by virtue of the fact that it was left with the son of the alcalo, however, from our findings as domestic observers and from third-party accounts, we have reliable information that the primary reason why the alcalo stamp was withdrawn was based on political affiliation to the opposition. Other than the fact that the alcalo may have entrusted the village stamp to his son, no other evidence or information of alleged abuse of or improper use of the stamp has been provided by the Ministry of Information or the Executive. It's worth noting that it is a norm and custom for many alcalolo and sefos in the Gambia to entrust their stamp to their most trusted offspring or relatives due to many factors, which includes but not limited to age, literacy deficiency in the official language, disability, etc. It's also worth noting that Alkalolu and Sefolu and their immediate family members have openly supported and continue to support and campaign for their desired candidates, including the ruling party, while exercising their Alkalo or Sefoship responsibilities. This is a fundamental political right guaranteed under Section 26 of the 1997 Constitution. Now, our position as domestic election observers, in this case EWC and Gambia participate, we state unequivocally that the temporary seizure of the Nyangen's alcalo stamp is ill-advised, unjustified, potentially a violation of the law, and has the effect of depriving bona fide Gambian residents of Nyangen village their inalienable right to vote. It's also our position that the action of the governor in seizing the alcalo seal without lawful authority or grounds may constitute a violation of the constitutionally guaranteed rights of bona fide residents of Nyangen who are entitled to vote under the laws of this country. Firstly, the seizure of the stamp of the alcalo will prevent many citizens of Nyangen from being registered on the voter roll, which is a violation of their right to vote as provided for Section 39 of the 1997 Constitution. Hence, the actions violate Section 39 of the said Constitution. It's important to note that the IEC supplementary voter registration, the IEC supplementary voter registration teams have limited days to conduct supplementary voter registration. In some areas, the distance to cover registration centers poses challenges to some people where adequate means of transportation are limited. For example, one of the closest registration centers in Nyangen is Kataba Alhaji Omar, where registration based on the IEC key movement schedule will only last for 3 days, which is April 8 to April 10. So, but if we were to go by that schedule, that registration would have ended yesterday. Failure to get registered means these eligible voters will be disenfranchised from voting in the 2026 presidential election. They will also be deprived from voting in the 2027 parliamentary and local government elections and any other by-election or referenda until the next voter registration. Possibly this could be in 2031. Secondly, we believe that the action of the governor can result to voter suppression and it is an abuse of his office, those violating Section 39, the right to vote and be registered, and Section 222, subsection 3, which is the Code of Conduct on the right of other persons while exercising official public functions of the 1997 Constitution. In addition, Section 26 of the 1997 Constitution, the fundamental political rights, stated that every citizen of the Gambia of full age and capacity shall have the right, without unreasonable restrictions, and it goes further by saying, on general terms of equality, they should have access to public service and they shall not be discriminated based on political affiliation. Thirdly, it is our position that the government in its official press release on this subject matter has not provided any legal justification that the alcalde or his aide, which is the son, has issued attestation certificates to minors, non-Gambians, or any other person disqualified under Section 14 of the Elections Act 2025. The government also did not provide any legal justification that the Alcalo of Nyangen's action in entrusting his stamp to his son, like many Alcalo will do, that his action is illegal. Lastly, any person or any political party who is satisfied that the Alcalo or his aide has issued an attestation to an individual who should not have been registered by the IEC, the person should duly present his or her objection during the sessions of the revising court, which will sit immediately after the draft supplementary voter registration list is published by the IEC. In conclusion, the credibility of any public election likely depends on the voter roll. As a result, no lawful and or eligible citizen should be disenfranchised by any person or authority. The state and public officials must ensure that the non-negotiable right to vote and be registered, the political right and the right to access public service on general terms as provided for by the 1997 Constitution are always protected. Public officials must exercise their powers within the confines of the law and must not weaponize state authority in ways that undermine democratic participation, particularly against vulnerable rural populations. Our recommendation it's our recommendation to stop the ongoing voter suppression in Nyangen, and as a matter of urgency, we demand that the Ministry of Lands, Regional Government and Religious Affairs through the CRR Governor's Office return the Nyangen Alcalo stamp to prevent further disenfranchisement. Recommendation number 2. All disputes in connection with the supplementary voter registration process must be resolved through designated judicial process through the revising court, which is the appropriate forum to challenge the validity of any individual's registration on the register of voters by the IEC. We hope it will not get to a legal battle. Government, there are different means in which even the citizens of Nyangen can acquire an attestation. If not the Alcalo, they can also get it from the district CFO. But we have to also remember that the district CFO, perhaps where he lives, I don't know where he lives, could be very far from the village of Nyangen. So the government said in their press statement that they are assessing ways to give the stamp to another person within that village. To date, we have not had any information on that. What if that person is also connected to another political party? It is important for us to note that no public officer, including the ministers, cannot be prevented from exercising their political right. The same thing applies to Alcalos. If you look at the 1997 Constitution, you look at the Elections Act, and you also look at the Local Government Act, it does not prevent the Alcalos from being political. In fact, we have seen the NPP, Alcalos campaigning for the NPP openly. And it's the same Alcalos that also give attestations. We've also seen Alcalos campaigning for the other opposition parties. And the same Alcalos also issue attestations. That is their fundamental political right. No one can prevent them from exercising that. So with this particular case, I think the governor was really ill-advised, and the government should not have put out that statement without looking at the fundamental rights protected under Section 39 of the 1997 Constitution and Section 26 of the 1997 Constitution. On the Elections Bill, now Elections Act 2025, to remove the requirement, citing justifiable grounds, but to no avail. We once again call the National Assembly to amend Section 13, subsection 2D of the Elections Act by removing the Alcalo attestation as one of the ways of establishing citizenship and eligibility to vote in the Gambia. The government must make the acquisition of national identity documents mandatory while introducing seamless, affordable, and accessible means of acquiring national identity documents. Recommendation number 5, which is the last recommendation, though it is not the fault of the IEC on this matter, however, we recommend the IEC to consider extending the supplementary voter registration days at Kataba Alaji Umar once the Alcalo stamp is returned. Thank you very much. So we started our observation on April 8th, it was on Wednesday. We're still receiving reports. This one is special because when we are observing elections, there's what we call critical incidents. Critical incidents are very critical that it will draw our attention and address it. So we're going to be providing reports as the registration process continues. And if these issues have been observed, obviously we will report it. For now, we're still receiving reports from our ground observers.
So on the issue of the minors registering, one way that some of the people that are recruiting have also learned from their lessons. In 2021, they will go to the registration center with the birth certificate. So the registering officer will detect that they are underage, reject them, then they bring the attestation. Now they are not doing that. We've seen centers registering. You can see them as possibly by look they might look minor, but they came with attestation. Attestation don't have normally is the alcalde that will attest that you are above 18. So there is no confirmation to that effect for now, but still we are observing what is happening in the field, and this is where we are all learning. And those that are also recruiting the voters have also learned in the process their mistakes in 2021, so they are not repeating it in 2026. So if they realize that some of these young people might be below the age of 18, or they are not going to get 18 before on the 5th of December, they easily do away with the birth certificate in total, so they just come with attestation. And with that one, the IEC registration officers have no choice but only to issue them with the with the voter's card. But again, we are following the process, and for now, the most critical burning is on the table is the current alcalde stamp that we're talking about. And the one part that Mark talked about that I just want to raise concern, which is a big concern for us as observers, beyond the registration that we are seeing. Our law is that where you register is where you are going to vote. So these young people in Nyangen, beyond being denied the chance to register in Nyangen, if they are registered in another village, that means come the presidential election, if even if it is 15 kilometers away from their house, they have to go 15 kilometers away from Nyangen to go and register. And our elections is not a wholesale that we vote for all our candidates in one day, the presidential and the National Assembly. You vote for presidential today, after 3, 4 months, you go and vote for the National Assembly. So that will mean they'll have to redo that trek again when the National Assembly elections comes into play, that they'll have to walk another 15 kilometers to go back to that village that they have registered to go and exercise their franchise to vote. And that will be repeated in the local government elections. So you realize you are punished like 3, 4, 5 times on the same hurdle. So that's why we think this is very, very much important. Beyond returning the stamp to the alcalo, it's also important that we encourage the IEC, even though it's not their fault, but to look at a window of extending the registration exercise within that community, so the people will not have the burden of traveling long kilometers for every single elections. That will also increase the number of voter apathy when it is time for voting. Presidential, possibly the candidates might have a lot of money to provide transportation, but the National Assembly elections, possibly the candidates might not have that much money to provide transportation for the people, and the same hurdle will happen during the local government elections. Thank you.